Hello everyone, this is Leslie Pelch at the Vermont Center for Geographic Information. Welcome to our webinar today about ArcGIS story maps and how to make them. I'm going to start off by just pointing out that the recording of this webinar will be posted at VCGI's YouTube page. And as you can see on the screen, we're right at the front page of VCGI's website, and down here on the lower left below the contact information, there's a little string of icons that says connect with us above it. And if you click on the YouTube icon, that will take you right to the VCGI YouTube channel where you can see other previous webinars are also posted. So I encourage you to check through those and look for this recorded webinar in that place. We're going to start off today, before I get into talking about ArcGIS as a platform for creating online maps. I'm going to just briefly mention that although today we are going to focus on ArcGIS, I'm also planning to do a webinar in the future about another option, which is QGIS. Some of you may be familiar with QGIS as a free open source GIS desktop software. QGIS also has a platform called QGIS Cloud that allows you to do online maps and to host and share online maps. So I will be doing a webinar about that in the next month to 6 weeks, sometime before the end of January. But today we're going to focus on ArcGIS Online and specifically on creating a story map. In order to create a story map, you actually have to start out by making a map. And then you take that map and insert it into the framework that they've provided to make story maps. And in order to get started with all of this, we do have to have an account. I'm going to focus today on the fact that you can do all of this with a free public account. If you have an organizational account, you can also obviously create online maps and story maps. So the process is pretty much the same. The only difference is a little bit more functionality, a little bit fewer limitations, and you can actually store your photos on the ArcGIS platform rather than having to access them via URL from some other platform. So we'll see that in just a moment. So if you don't already have a free, well actually whether you already have a free account or not, and even if you have an organizational account, you click on Sign In up in the upper right corner here, just to the left of the Esri logo in order to get started. So if you don't yet have a public account, you just go right over here to the left and click on Create a Public Account. It's a free account. You have to give a little bit of information, not too much. And then once you do that, you'll have your account and you'll be able to sign in. So I already have an account, so I'm going to go ahead and sign into that. As you can see, I'm now signed in. It says my name up here. I can access my content. Before I actually start making my own map, I do want to show you a couple of existing story maps just so you know what we're working towards, and also maybe to see a better example of how powerful this can be as a platform for sharing both mapping information but other types of information as well, or the images and text that can go along with maps to make them a little bit more meaningful. So this is something I happen to notice that ArcGIS was had on their rotating set of example story maps. And it's called Atlas for a Changing Planet. You can see they're making good use of beautiful photographs, text, just a little bit of text to explain what we're going to talk about in the story map, and then basically really taking advantage of the medium and the platform here to do some beautiful photographs and then get into the maps. And all the maps, I believe all the maps in this story map just are global maps and show various types of information on those maps. As you can see over here in the text, it's not just a map, it's not just an image, it's interactive. So we can zoom into an area of interest if we want to, like New England. You'll notice that the data is intended for a global map. So as you zoom in, you do start to come across the limits of the data, but you can still get in there pretty close. And notice it says click on the map for details. So not only can we zoom in on the map, but we can click to find out what the values of these pixels are in the different places around the area. And then we can zoom back out pretty easily. We can move on to other maps. I like this one in particular because it gives you this nice picture of where forests are. Obviously, the South America, parts of Africa still have some pretty dense forests. But over on the left in the text, it says click here to see forest loss, which is particularly striking. We click on that, and now we've got a magenta layer that's showing us where we've lost forest, which I thought was a really effective use of the map. So lots more maps, and just enough text to help you understand what the map is showing. And then also some links to other information you'll see in the text. That's one of the other benefits of this format, is that it allows you to take advantage of images to make your point, as well as maps, and then also you can link to other information to provide additional information about your story map. So I just wanted to show that. And then one other thing I'm going to demonstrate is actually my story map that I created, and then I will go through the process of kind of creating a simplified version of my story map. Oh, I'm going to delete yesterday's practice. Maps and story maps first. So the map that I made recently in order to create my example story map, the map is called Our Trip. So first I had to create the map, and then I used that map to create this story map that I will show you briefly. So my family went on a trip to Europe this summer, big deal, and we took lots of pictures. And of course, it was a trip around Europe, which means that it was geographically relevant. And so I'll just show you what I put together. So our trip started out in Denmark, then we went to Scotland and Iceland. I've got the picture here of us in Boston getting ready to get on the train to head out on the trip. You can see I've got a little bit of text. We can now move around the map and zoom into the map. And obviously, as I created this story map, I got to set the zoom level. And when I created the map, I decided what icons would be indicated on the map. Choose the pictures, choose the text. As we move through this, you can see the pictures give a little more interest and detail to what we're seeing on the map, which is just kind of where we went. I'll point out when I actually put together an example, a similar story map, the fact that although in this story map I used the same map, I had one map and I just moved around on it, zoomed in and out on it a bit, and obviously had these different icons indicating different places on the map. But when you create your story map, you can actually use multiple maps. You can have a bunch of different maps, and each section or slide can point to a different map if you want it to, or just as seems appropriate to your story map or to your story. And so, for instance, you might actually show the same geographic area and extent, but perhaps with a different map to highlight a different aspect of that particular area. I also want to point out that it's very easy to add all these features in the panel. We have text, obviously, we have pictures, we also can have links. So here's a link to the campground that we stayed at in Scotland. And I will demonstrate when I put together a story map that you can also put in videos. And so there you go. You can see we just I continue on here. I also I wanted to point out that the map is not just a static image, it's an interactive map. So even as someone's looking at the story map, they can interact with it. They can zoom in and out. They can move around. So this part of the map, I actually drew a little bit of the path that we hiked on when we went on a hike, 2-day hike. Pictures of the hike, pictures of some of the things we saw on the hike, like Highland cattle, and then a little boat ride we took that led to riding the Harry Potter train. Okay, so there's my story map. How did I create that? So I'm logged into my ArcGIS account. You can see I do have a little bit of content here. If you were starting a new account, you obviously would not have any content here. You would just start with create. So you want to create a map. Give it a title. I'll just do that. And then you can see that it's saying save in folder, Leslie Pelch, and I don't have multiple folders within my my content area, but if I did, I could choose to put this in a particular folder. Oops. All right, so there's our sort of default starting place. Now, obviously, I do not want to create a map that takes place in the United States, or a story rather that takes place in the United States. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom to the area I'm actually interested in, which is Europe. I can then just close right out of that to get rid of it. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. You don't have a lot of control over your zoom. It's all preset zoom levels, so luckily this zoom level works pretty well for me as a level for my starting page for my map about our trip. I'm just going to do 3 points today, one in each country, just to demonstrate how I put this together. Something else to think about, and you'll see this as we get to the point where we say we want to make a story map, how you have your map centered is going to matter, because depending on your formatting and in your story map. But you can always come back and edit this map. That's one of the nice things about all of this, is that once you've created this map and then bring it into your story map, you can still come back to this map and edit it. And as long as you save it, you'll immediately see those changes in your story map. All right, so here we go. We've got a blank map. The first thing that you want to do generally when you are starting to make a map in ArcGIS Online is choose your base map. So by default, it's giving me this nice topographic map, which is indeed the map that I ended up using as my background map for my story map. But let's just see what other options we have here. So Esri provides you with 12 different base maps that you can use. Imagery with labels, and then a number of different street maps, both their street map and the OpenStreetMap, if you prefer that kind of map for your story. They also have these nice light gray and dark gray, very plain maps. So if the map that you're making, really you want to highlight information on the map, not so much maybe the topographic features of the places you're looking at, similar to the Atlas for a Changing Planet, where they were really putting a lot of thematic information on there, then you might want to choose one of these simpler gray base maps. We also have one that's the National Geographic style, USGS, well, but yeah, so that's going to take us back to the US. Didn't want to do that. Kind of interesting that it does that, since it does have the information for Europe. All right, so I'm going to stick with, let's see, I'll go to the street, one of the street map options, just for something different. So after you've decided on your base map, then you start considering, well, what am I putting information on the map, or am I just using a basic base map as sort of a background and orientation for my story? Obviously, you don't really have to do much more at this point in terms of adding to the map, if really all you wanted is a map to give orientation and a little additional information. But in my case, I do want to indicate the 3 countries that we went to on our trip. So I'm going to look at add and see what my options are for adding to the map. As is often the case with GIS programs, rather than having something simple like add points to the map, add lines to the map, we have add map notes, which is not, to my mind, terribly intuitive in terms of what that means. But add map notes really just means adding points, lines, or areas to your map. other options that we see here are adding a layer from file. And I'll just show you that it does tell you what your options are as soon as you click on that. So you can import a zipped shapefile. If you're familiar with shapefile format, just have to make sure that that shapefile is actually zipped up into a zip file in order to upload it. You see that you have some limitations in terms of number of features. That's important to know about, to both know your data and know that that limitation is here. You can also upload a CSV or text file, basically a spreadsheet that's been saved into a CSV or text file, as long as that spreadsheet or that CSV has location information in it, meaning addresses, including state, country if necessary, zip code if possible, sort of as much address information as you have access to. In that, or it can have lat-long coordinates or state plane coordinates, whatever, a coordinate system. You just have to know what it is if there are coordinates in there. You can also upload GPS data, which is GPX format. Notice that there's a limit on how many features you can have that's actually lower than the 1,000. It's 250 if you do the CSV or TXT file with addresses. Let's just very quickly, let me just show you adding these other types of files. So you click on Choose File, you go to where you know your data is. So I actually have some sort of random data here that doesn't have anything to do with my story map, just so that I can show the process. So here is an Excel spreadsheet saved as a CSV, a comma delimited file, and it has restaurant data for somewhere in the United States, and we're about to find out where. So there's this step that allows you to remap in case any of your address information is not clear. You can actually indicate and change how it's mapped, but you can see that by default it's saying that the name in the spreadsheet that's called address, they're going to assume that's the address. Well, that's correct. The field that's called city, they're going to assume that's city, state. You can see that the names in this spreadsheet are straightforward enough that this should work just fine. And there we are in Burlington. And by default, this is showing me that we have a few different ways to draw this. This is actually creating kind of a heat map where areas that have a lot of restaurants are showing up as a big circle and areas with fewer restaurants are smaller, but as we zoom in, they kind of break apart a little bit, eventually. Oh, maybe they don't. All right, so we just want to go to a regular location symbol, meaning a dot for every restaurant. It's a little bit hard to see on here. Change our base map to the gray. So you can see all of the dots, each one representing a restaurant, and you can also see that by default, it has created a pop-up for each one, and it has brought in the information that was in that CSV file, that Excel spreadsheet. So basically, I was able to go from a spreadsheet to points on a map with the information linked to each point in this pop-up very quickly. And I will just point out that now that we've done that, we can also edit that pop-up if we want to. We can remove it. If we don't want the pop-ups, we can also configure it. We can do things like say which of those fields we actually want to include in the pop-up by just clicking. So I might not really want all the state and zip information, but I do want the cuisine, the website, perhaps the phone number. Okay. And then I can also just remove that if I've decided I don't want it. So let me show you one other example of a way to add data from a file. So this time I'm going to upload a zipped shapefile that I created. And this data is actually some GPS data that I collected and then changed into a shapefile, transformed into a shapefile, and it shows a path that goes around the National Life Building through the hillside here in Montpelier. And so there it is. So again, Pretty easy. This is actually both line data and point data. So if I click on this, you'll see whatever information was in my GPS data, which wasn't very much. It does give the elevation. Okay, so there's two examples of ways that you can add data. I'm going to remove that again. And the final thing that I would like to show you, because I had a question during the webinar the first time I did it about whether you can add different data as base map. So we're given these 12 base map options. Well, what if you don't like any of them and you happen to have some data or map image or something that you want to use? So the one way that I know of to change the base map and bring in your own base map essentially is to add layer from web. And you can see that there's a few different options here for those of you who are familiar with these various different sources of geographic information. You can take advantage of this. And I'm just going to demonstrate the fact that you can get a WMS OGC web service excuse me, from the VCGI website. So let's just go over to VCGI, go into Data and Imagery, Web Services. So this is a way to access geospatial data that doesn't involve downloading it, but rather involves connecting to it as a service over the internet, which means it only works if you have internet connection, but then ArcGIS Online only works if you have internet connection. So I'm going to try adding in some of our black and white imagery. Cached means that it's going to perform a little bit faster. It's pre-created at different zoom levels. Vermont State Plane meters. I'm going to choose that. Actually, maybe I'll choose Web Mercator. And you'll see that there are kind of two options for each of these imagery services. One is an ArcGIS 10 layer file. That's what I would click on if I was wanting to use ArcGIS on my desktop right now. And all I would have to do is click on this and it would both open ArcGIS and plug in this service so that I would see it in my ArcGIS project. But what I want to do is actually add this service, an OGC version of this service, to my ArcGIS Online map. So open source GIS would be the key here because OGC refers to the Open Geospatial Consortium. I'm not sure I have that exactly right, but the short thing to know is look to the ArcGIS 9.3 or higher or open source GIS service, right click, copy link address, and you'll see that it gives you, oops, actually let's change that, WMS OGC web service. So now I'm just right clicking and pasting. Click use as base map and add layer. And voila, whoops. We got that nice high resolution imagery. And we can also zoom, oh, that's interesting. We could zoom out to the whole state because this is a whole state's worth of data. But notice now this is all we have as our base map. We've just lost the rest of the world because this, we're now saying this is what we want as base map and this only includes Vermont. So if that's what we want to do, we're all set. If not, as is the case for me, I'm going to get rid of it. Oh, I think I might have to start. No, I just have to select something else. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my open. Oh, yeah, I can't now. I think I have to start a new map because I cannot remove this. Okay, so we'll go to new map. All right, so we went through a number of different ways to add data, but we are actually going to use the simplest way, which is to add map notes. I'll also point out now that when you start a new map, generally it gives you these 4 steps to point out what you need to do. to get started on your map. Okay, so add map notes. The first thing we do is pick a template. There's a few different templates listed here. I'm going to stick with the map notes template, which just means it's the plain template that just gives you some points, lines, and area. I'm going to change the name to where we went. It's kind of the name of the data layer that I'm creating. And you can see I've got some push pins, I've got some lines, I've got some different areas and shapes. So I'm going to choose the push pin and start out by putting a push pin on Denmark because we went to Denmark. I'm going to call it Denmark. If I want to, I can give some description in here. If my goal was really to create a map and have people interact with my map, then I would do things probably like put a good description, perhaps put an image that would show up in a pop-up box, and notice that that image has to be linkable, so it has to be an image that's posted somewhere like Facebook, Flickr, Picasa, someplace like that, and then you get the direct URL to that image and just plug it in here. The image can also serve, can be a link itself, so that if someone clicks on the image, it can take them to a website or wherever you'd like them to go. You put that URL right here. Even though I picked an icon for my little push pin here, I can actually change it at this point. So I can click on change symbol. I'm going to pick a nice little star, make it a little bit bigger, and go with that. Okay, so there's my first piece of data that I'm putting on my map. I'm going to put another one on Scotland. There we go. I'm going to call it Scotland. Again, I'm going to change the symbol. And now I've got 2 stars on my map, and I'll do one more on Iceland. And give that another star. And there. So there's my very simple map. Now, as I said, we're not so much focused on creating a lot of functionality in the map because we're going to use the map in our story map and add most of our functionality, things that we're highlighting in the story map. But keep in mind that we can do a lot more with this map. So if people are interested in learning more about that, feel free to contact me and let me know, and I can do a webinar just to go a little bit more into the ways that we can customize this map. But it includes things like, let's get out of edit mode here, making this pop-up menu have a lot more in it, like pictures, links, that kind of thing. All right, so here's our map. It just contains this little where we went layer. So this is a layer of geographic data we've created, and our topographic map in the background. Well, we'll leave the topographic map. Notice that you can not only edit the individual features that you've added to the map, which in this case really just means editing the pop-up box or moving the feature, which you can do at any time when you're in edit mode. You can also change the layer itself, a few things about the layer itself. And the way you do that is you make sure you're in the content section as opposed to about or legend. And then under that layer, which is the where we went layer, we click on our 3 little circles and see what our options are. One thing is transparency. So I can make these a little bit transparent, which might be useful just in case they're blocking the name of a town or part of the country. I can decide to show this layer in the legend or not. You may have noticed when I clicked on legend quickly, it said no legend. So if I click on show in legend, it does show. Notice that it's not actually showing the symbology we've chosen. It's showing kind of the default symbology, so it's not a particularly useful legend in my opinion. So I'm going to go back and say hide. Oops. There's not that much more we can do other than rename the the layer and then set the visibility range. So if we only want these features to show up within a certain range, we can set a range of scales within which it would show up. Okay. So there's our map. We'll center a little bit over here. So the most important thing now that we've actually created our map is to save our map. I often forget to save despite years of using ArcGIS. So we're going to go ahead and save the map. I have to give it a title once again. And we're going to save it in that same folder. All right, so now we have saved our map. Once we have saved our map, and not until we've saved our map, we can change some settings in the share box and also then potentially create some more things. So right now it's not public. By default, my map is not public. But I just have to click here, and by making it public, you notice we had a link to the map before we made it public. So we can choose to share the map with others by sending them the link. Now that it's public, we can also do these two other things: embed in a website or create a web app. So to embed our map in a website, we just click on embed, and you'll see that we have some options that we can change, like the size of our map and orientation, what tools and icons appear on the little embedded map. By default, it just has zoom control, scale bar. We can add a home button. We can add view larger map, which will allow people to click a link to go to the bigger map, map details, legend, all these options. We can go with a light or dark theme. So once we have set these things the way we think we want them to be, all we really have to do is copy and paste the text, the code that is automatically generated in this little box here. For some reason, they make it very, very small. But all you have to do is click on it, so it's all highlighted, right-click, copy, and paste that code into some website source code, which means if you have access to that source code, you can do it yourself. If you do not have access, you'd have to work with whoever manages your website. And just to show a quick example of this, I'm going to go back to the VCGI website. In the About VCGI section, we have a Directions to VCGI, and I created a little embedded map here to show where VCGI is located. And it's nice because it's not just a map image, it's an interactive map. It allows people to say, oh, okay, if I take the highway, what exit do I get off? Looks like exit 8. I drive down the exit. I'm going to be taking a right. So it obviously goes along with the directions, and it allows them to see where we are. So that's just a simple directions embedded map, but you can have your more interesting map embedded as well. And going back to the share options, we're going to finally get to creating a story map, which is the way that we do that is we create a web app, because story map is a type of web app. Notice there's a bunch of other types of web apps that you might be interested in checking out. But today we're going to focus on story map. And even within the story map, there's a few different templates that we can choose from. I'm going to go with the story map journal. Just my limited experience, I've found this to be the easiest to work with and gives the interactive result that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and choose story map journal. Notice that you seem to have three options here. I'll say this third option, preview, is not really a preview. It actually just takes you to a page that tells you a little bit more about this style of story map journal. Just gives you some more information about it, what you can do with it. The two meaningful options here are create app and download. Download actually allows you to download the code that creates this story map, which means that someone, again, who's working directly on their own website and wants to create the story map and put it on their website, you can do that. You can download the code, the templates. It allows you to create that story map and then actually put it on your website. What we want to do today, what I want to do, is create a story map that's going to continue to exist in the cloud on the arcgis.com site. so I don't actually have to host it anywhere. So we have to actually give it a different title because it won't let you name it the same as another thing you have saved. And we can add more tags if we want to. We can put in a summary if we want to. Notice that by default it does say share this app the same way as the map, but we could uncheck that perhaps if we're still working on a draft or we just don't want to share it, want it to be an internal app, something like that. But I'm going to leave that sharing it publicly. So first we have two choices for our overall layout. One is to have a side panel, the other is to have a floating panel. The only difference here really is that your map, your background map goes across the whole screen with the floating panel, and your panel actually blocks part of the map, whereas the side panel just has the map section a little bit separate, although immediately adjacent to the side panel. So let's try that one. And then we have to give it a title. So this is going to be the title that appears kind of on our intro page, our landing page. Gives you a very brief overview so you know what you're doing, and then you start filling in your content. So you can see that the very first thing we have to do is tell it what do you want to have in the main stage, as they call it, of this story map on the front page, the first section, the home section. And although this is called a story map, you saw that most of these have maps. You also saw in the Atlas for a Changing Planet that they actually start out on the home page with an image here, not a map. So you can choose to do that by just clicking on image and then telling it where your image is located. You can do a video and pointing at the platform that hosts your video, or you can do a web page and just fill in the URL. So we are going to actually do a map. You can see that I can actually select any map from among the maps that I have created. So I am in fact going to do our trip. No, sorry, story map trip. The map that I just created. And I'm going to start out with default location, content, pop-up. I am going to put an overview map, and I'm not going to put a legend because I don't find the legend to be useful. So when I click on next, now it lets me do the side panel section, which is where I put some text. And I can format that text a little bit. As you can see, this is also where we would add pictures. So if I go ahead and click that I want to add a picture, once again, I get these options. And actually, I can add an image, a video, or a web page. I am going to actually use pictures that are on Facebook, but I'm not going to log in through Facebook because I can never remember my login. I'm just going to say that, and then I'm just going to go to Facebook. So here are some pictures. We will use this one on our front page. So here I am looking at a picture that I have posted in Facebook, and all I have to do to get it into my map journal is right-click on the image and choose Copy Image Address. So that's going to copy the URL directly to that image, and I can just pop it in here and do apply. Okay, so I've created my home page, my first page or section of my story map. Now notice that the way that my map is centered doesn't really work all of a sudden because I pushed over to the left a little bit. Now I need to really fix that. So I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to edit the main stage, which is the bigger panel, and I'm going to edit the location of my map. I'm going to go from map default to custom configuration. And this allows me to just drag my map around, and as you'll see, it also allows me to zoom in when I'm ready to. All right, so I just recentered that. That looks fine. My overview map is fine. So now I'm ready to add another section. So this next section is going to be the Denmark section. So I'm going to call it Denmark. I'm using the same map, so I'll leave that. I do want to do a custom configuration because I want to both recenter and zoom in on Denmark. And that looks good. I can also choose to open up the pop-ups. So this is where if you have actually done more, customized your pop-ups to contain information that you do want to highlight, this is where you could take advantage of that. Now, I did not really do my pop-ups that way on my story map, but let's just imagine for a second that I had. All I have to do is click on it. So let's say I wanted to show not only a photograph over in the side panel, but also in this pop-up. I could have put a photograph that works well in a fairly small format because you don't have a lot of control over your pop-up here. But I could have put a pop-up in here. I could have put links. I could have put a video, any of that stuff, and that would now be showing on my map once I save this. Okay. Okay, so that was my map. So now in my side panel, I'm going to put a picture again. Actually, maybe this is where instead of a picture, I will put a video. So let's just go to YouTube briefly. I happen to know there's a fun video called Impressions from Denmark. We're going to quickly turn this off. Oops. And we just want to put the link to that video right into our story map. So I've said I want to insert an image, video, or web page. I've said I want to do a video actually. Now I'm going to click on YouTube, put the link in here, check it, which is kind of nice. That way you make sure you've got the right link, and as long as this all pops up the way you expect it to, you just go ahead and click select video. You have a few options in terms of how it will fit. Custom custom would be if you don't really want it to take up the whole panel, but you'd rather still have a little bit more room for text or have text go around the side or something. No, I guess let's see, it says width will always fit the panel, so I'm not sure why it gives you a width option. We're just going to go with fit it in there. Say okay, and now we've got, and I still can put my text up here. Oops, I think I can. Okay, so there's some text, there's a video, and there's our map. Oops. Could edit that a little bit. Woohoo. Oh, come on. Oh, I see. Huh, why is it not letting me just edit the text? Okay, never mind. Not quite sure what that did. I think I may have just added one more. No. Seem to have added a blank space. Well, I'm not quite sure what it's doing here. There we go. All right, we'll forget about the text. Okay, so there's our Denmark section with a video. And let's add another section now. Go to Scotland. And we're going to need to configure the map. So we do that by going up to Scotland. And if we didn't like our zoom level, obviously we can change that. I'll zoom in a little bit more. And save that. I'm going to go back to map default for pop-up because I don't want pop-up to appear. Okay, so now our side panel, we can say whatever we want to say about Scotland. And this time I'll add a picture. Back to our So again, choose your picture, open up your picture, right-click, copy image address, pop that in. If you want to do a caption, you can do that. And, yeah. All right. And let's see. All right, so you get the picture. We've got our starting point where we have, in this particular example, we have our map zoomed out to show all the locations that we're going to highlight. We've got sort of a random picture here, but maybe the picture of us getting ready to head out on a trip might have been a little better if I'd remembered to put it in this album. And then we can move through our trip. And this zooms into different parts of the map. We can put different types of media or just text if we want over in the side panel. And as we move around, it moves our map. It gives us our different content. Let's see, is there anything else I wanted to show you in the map notes? I know. Let's say when we made our story map, I suddenly remembered, oh, I forgot to include another section about some aspect. Maybe I wanted 2 sections about Denmark. And I would go ahead and add a section, but then it would actually be in the wrong place because it would automatically be tacked on to the end. If I wanted to change the organization of my sections, all I have to do is click on Organize, and then I can drag the different sections around to change their order. So in this case, I just changed the order so it goes from the home page to the Scotland page to the Denmark page. So it keeps obviously the information about each section the same, it just changes the order. Okay, and the other thing to always remember is that you have to save, save, save. And let's see, I was going to maybe also show you that, well, so let's say as we went along that we didn't, or no, I know what I want to point out. So as I mentioned, in this example, so far we've only used one map. We have one map in here. Each section is referring to the same map. Let's add a section that uses a different map. So remember, the very first thing for the main stage content is map, and by default it's going to keep using the same map. But we can, oh, that's interesting. I thought it was going to allow me to choose a different map. It's actually letting me edit my map, which is even better in a way. So let's say I wanted to change it to imagery with labels. Okay, oh, is this going to change it for all of them? No, I think it will just change it for this one. We shall see. So that, okay, I see what I did. I edited my story map, the map that I created for the story map that I called Story Map Trip. So I did actually go back and edit the map, which means, let's just check this out. Okay. Why? Oh, because I added it. Okay. So you'll notice that this map has a different section, a different background. Let's see whether that changed the maps in our other sections. Yes, it did. All right, so the point there is that I just edited the map that was being used. So I didn't just change it for that one section, I changed it for all of the sections, which is not actually what I meant to do. So let's quickly go back to the other map. Go back to editing the map. That's kind of nice. That allows you to go back to your original map and work on it directly, rather than having to open up a separate window. Okay, that's fine. So now let's go to that new section that I created and edit that, because what I really wanted to do was to show that I can point at a different map. So rather than click on edit, I need to click on my little drop down and say select a map. So now I can look at these different maps. So this one I'm pointing at story map trip. Let's try, see what that is. Ah, okay, and then we can actually edit that. So here's my second map that I'm now using. Change the base map. And notice that because this is a whole different map, this doesn't have my icons on it. So I could go ahead and add some icons right now if I want to. Just put some quick points on here. And over here. All right, so just to show that we've created a brand new map, we can save it. And that's what's going to be used on this particular panel. So now if we start at the beginning, so our original map is over here with our side panel as we have designed it. Now we zoom into Scotland, we zoom into Denmark, and then in our final panel we zoom back out, and maybe I would make this my final section where I say Europe was great. And there's my slightly strange story map. And again, we can reorganize this to fix the fact that I've got Scotland and Denmark in the wrong order. There. And then we save. Ah, story is shared, but it has issues. This is an interesting thing. So I created this brand new map, but I have a feeling that map is not publicly shared. So let's go ahead and change that from private to public. It's very nice that it allows you to do this right within working on your story map. And oops, we're all set. And now we can save it. Okay, so there's our story map. I think that's all I wanted to show. I did have a couple of questions yesterday. One we already talked about, which is changing the base map. Another question was whether you can output this this format, this story map, into another format like a PDF or something more static. And I don't believe you can. I could not figure out any way to do that. You can share it in the sense of giving the link to it. You can post your link somewhere, send it to someone. You can embed the story map simply by copying the iframe information right here. So that's a nice option, but you can't, there's a way for this to automatically output as a more static version. I think that is it in terms of questions and the general overview of how to create a story map. I hope that this was useful for everyone, and that if you have any questions, you'll contact me. Just go back to our VCGI website. Here I am. Contact information right on the front page, actually on every page of our website, but over on the left, Leslie Pelch, Outreach Coordinator. And don't forget that all of our webinars that are recorded are posted on our YouTube page, so check them out. We have some playlists that have a little focus, like, yes, well, they have a few different things. Where are we? QGIS, there we go. There's a QGIS playlist, and there are some other playlists, including fun ones. So hope everyone found this useful, and I look forward to hearing from you if you have questions, and hope you have fun making story maps. Thanks.